With the season approaching fast, the big question is the Leafs defense good enough? We'll get into that and more in this episode of Hat Trick HQ. But before we start, I just wanted to say that 90% of you guys aren't subscribed, so if you're enjoying this daily Leafs and NHL content, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. But we'll hop straight into this. Can Timothy Liljegren crack the top four? When you look at Timothy Liljegren over the past 4 seasons with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he played 11 games, 2 games, jumped up to 61 games where he put up 23 points and was 11th in Calder voting. And just last season, he put up 18 points in 67 games. Including these 18 points, he had 93 blocked shots and 107 hits. The big question going around right now is, does the Leafs have enough on the back end to kind of work their way through the season and ultimately become Stanley Cup champions? And in my opinion, we have the defenseman we need. Just at the age of 25, Timothy Liljegren is poised for a breakout season. We've seen him slowly develop through the years where he would work on his stick game, a bit of offense. He's incredible just moving the puck and just starting the transition play. He kind of reminds me of just a slightly less offensive Klingberg in the situation where he's not going to go out and put you up 10, 15 goals. He's not going to go out and put you up 50 points. But he's the type of guy that at such a young age, his game has just transitioned so well where he's just working on his defensive edge. He's able to clear the puck out of the zone. He can move the puck. He can start fast breaks on his own. And it kind of just leads you to think, is he going to be good enough this season to be a top 4 defenseman? And in my opinion, I think he has all the potential to do this. So when you kind of look at the Leafs lines, it gets you, where does he play? So when you go into this article, it did say that Morgan Rielly and TJ Brodie would be playing the top pairing. Then you see a guy like Jake McCabe and newly acquired John Klingberg as the second pairing, and a guy like Mark Giordano and Timothy Liljegren on the bottom pairing. When you kind of look at these pairings, with a guy like Morgan Rielly, he's almost your unicorn where he can provide offense, he can still play defense. He's not incredible at his defensive game, but over the years it has developed. He's a fast guy, he can get back in transition, he can move the puck, he can get pucks on net. And just pairing him with a guy like TJ Brodie, who's just your lockdown guy, a guy that's going to break up and disrupt plays and just be able to clear pucks on his own and defend. I think this is the perfect pairing. Then you see last offseason where the Leafs acquired a guy like Jake McCabe and then a newly acquired John Klingberg this season. It kind of gives you the same aspect, but you get a situation where you get a super physical guy in McCabe. He can clear the pucks. He's great in his own zone. He can lay hits. He can still get pucks on net, block shots. He's almost your all-around guy. Then you put him on a line with just this offensively gifted guy in Klingberg, where he has a rocket of a shot on the back end, incredible passes, and just overall your offensive defenseman that is just perfect for a power play specialist and just the second pairing. But when you get down to the third pairing, you get a guy like Giordano and a guy like Timothy Liljegren. So when you look at this, Giordano is your veteran. It's kind of getting this situation of, do you want to play him a full 82 games if he's healthy, or do you feel more comfortably kind of rotating him out of the lineup? You have a guy like Benoit that can come in, a physical guy. You have a guy like Connor Timmins, who's still a bit of a project, but he's getting up there, he's developing, and he can almost slide in for those 20 games if needed. But Timothy Liljegren is the big question on this bottom pairing, because you kind of look at it, as I've said, with his transition game. He can still break pucks up, but he's not the biggest guy just at 6 foot. So you get into the situation is, when you get into the playoffs, we've seen he only dressed for 5 games last year. And it makes you wonder, is it that Keefe doesn't trust him, or is he not big enough to kind of handle these physical kind of style games where you've seen against the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning? And when you get into matchups against Boston and so on, you don't know if he's going to be able to physically get into the corners and clear these boards, because the playoffs is such a different beast that it kind of makes you think, can he do this? Is he big enough? His stick game is there, his transitions game's there, but it's kind of, what do you do with him in this situation? So when you look at cap friendly, this season, Timothy Liljegren is getting $1.4 million. After this year, he does go into his RFA rights, so you can still qualify him at his 1.5 qualifying offer. And it kind of leaves you in the situation of, do we trust him enough to play him top 4? Do we take this guy and extend him to his 4, 5, 6-year deal next year and just hope he continuously progresses? Or is Timothy Liljegren kind of this guy that he's left in the situation of, do we move him at deadline? Do we move him throughout the season for a guy like Sidorov, Hanifin? You'd obviously have to add on this end because you're not sure what the value of a guy like this is for other teams. But at such a young age, you got to think there is value floating around the league, and a rebuilding team would love to, move off a 30-year-old, 31-year-old defenseman that has more of a physical game like Zadorov at 6'6" and 250 pounds. And you kind of can use this guy as a trade chip. In my opinion, I think you keep this guy. If you can bring in a guy like Zadorov on this Leafs team, and if you just look at the lines and run Morgan, Riley, Zadorov, you could move Brody down on the left as he is a left-handed playing the right D. So you could go TJ Brody and maybe a guy like Timothy Liljegren. And then just on the bottom pairing, you can still run this Jake McCabe and John Klingberg pairing. I think this just leaves you in such a good spot. And this is why I personally think that Timothy Liljegren is just the X factor when it comes to this D-core. If we've seen these guys, we know what Klingberg does, we know what Brody does, we know what Riley and Giordano and McCabe can do. But Liljegren can step up in a way where it just produces more. If he could get a 30-point season, work on his physical game, put a little bit of more weight on this offseason, and just kind of bring the factor that we haven't had from him yet, it could be game-changing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow in a video on how we think, a trade could go down, a guy we could pick up, everything like that. And if you guys have any suggestions of videos, if there's anything you wanted to see or for us to talk about, make sure to go down and leave that in the comments. But we're going to get into our last thing, which is comment of the day. Comment of the day comes from Amy Lover 22786. Woll is our future. This was from the video yesterday where we talked about Joseph Woll and his impact. We're kind of going down this trend now of just talking about these younger guys that could really take the next step for the Toronto Maple Leafs and just produce at a level that we haven't seen them yet, which would be just incredible. We've talked before on how you need these guys on the smaller deals to step up. We've seen Tampa do it. We've seen Chicago do it when they won the Cup. Pittsburgh. You just need those small contracts from rookies, making under 1.5, 1 million, just smaller than that, where they can produce at a $2 or $3 million player. And I think Liljegren is that. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. If you have any comments, you can leave them down below. We love reading them. If you can subscribe this, we are getting very close to 1,000, and can't thank you enough on how much it means to us. And take care.